You're listening to the 14th Source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Raspel.
And we are your two overeducated codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses in the episode for Friday, December 2nd, 2022. Before you knew it, this 2022 is over, and it doesn't feel a day past 2020. So we're going forward. And actually, you know what? I'm being disingenuous there. Time is moving forward, and you know what, Andrew? Time is moving forward beautifully and perfectly, and it's nothing but rainbows and sunshine. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Because this week, Andrew, and I'm actually upset because of how recording works. I can't actually talk about it yet, despite the fact that when you're hearing this, I can. Wednesday, November 30th, merely 2 days ago, Disney Plus released, I'm guessing the first few episodes?
Of
Willow.
Of Willow.
And
where are you going?
I am literally counting down the days. I have a huge, like 2 foot by 3 foot whiteboard calendar on my wall that's usually used to mark off, like, have I done all the pencils, writing, and inking and coloring of my comic? That's all gone. I'm just like, how many days till Willow? And it is soon, my friend. In fact, like I said, as of the time you're hearing this, dear listeners, it is here. Willow is here. And this is now the Willow cast, as far as I'm concerned. Until we get a Highlander reboot, let me tell you what we're talking about, friends. I'm excited. But like I said, I guess for your benefit, Andrew, and dear listeners, I haven't watched any of it yet because it's not out yet.
It's not available, yeah. Strangely enough.
So if I don't say anything next week, dear listeners, you know it's bad.
You'll say something either way.
I'm excited though. You know what? Disney Plus generally is doing some good stuff. We're working our way through. Not Andrew. What's it called? Andor.
Andrew's something else.
Andor is something else. Actually, I was making the joke yesterday. I'm like, whenever I say the word Andor, I just feel non-committal because I was like, well, we could go to the store and/or do Grubhub, right?
It's like, what are you talking about? And/or. That's funny.
But yeah, no. As far as I'm concerned, like with a lot of with She-Hulk, with Andor, with I'm assuming Willow, at least by my metric and my standards, Disney Plus is knocking it out of the park. So good on you, Disney Plus. Keep doing things that I like.
That's all that matters,
right? But this week, dear listeners, we are going to not talk about Willow, much to my. I
mean, we just did.
Yeah, that's true. You know what? You're right. We did.
We just did.
Even though we could talk more about Willow, we're actually going to discuss our respective weeks in geek this week. So, Andrew, if you don't mind starting, what was your week in geek? And was it Willow? Please be Willow. Please be Willow. Please be Willow.
Would it be funny if I said, yeah, I watched all of Willow, and I just had like a big unload of like, yeah, man, I got it. I already saw it. It sucks. No, I didn't watch Willow. Actually, I watched...
and you never will.
I watched a new TV show. I watched a show that came out this year, released October of 2022.
So this is not new with quotes.
This is not... I don't think so.
New to you. I mean, I guess it is, but yeah.
It may have been that it was released earlier in the year and the worldwide release was on October 28th, but that
window is small.
Yeah, it was created because it's an anniversary show. So let's get started.
Let's get to the meat.
I watched a show. Mm-hmm. Actually, I'll get the backstory of how I got to this show. But I watched a show called Kamen Rider Black Sun. So Kamen Rider Black Sun is a show that was created to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Kamen Rider.
Okay.
And the 35th anniversary of Kamen Rider Black, which it is actually basically a remake of. So, okay, now what are we talking about here?
Yes, this is layered here.
Kamen Rider is it's a tokusatsu show from Japan. Mm-hmm. Made by Toei, along with every other tokusatsu show.
Meaning a show, yeah.
these are shows like Godzilla, like Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, Spider-Man. All of these special effects, as I think Tokusatsu refers to. So these are like with lots of explosions. Everything's filmed in a quarry. Sometimes
Doctor Who?
often guys in costumes.
Wait, is Doctor Who a Tokusatsu show?
Doctor Who. Well, what's funny is
at least in the 80s,
yes, except it's also like it's British though, so it's like, what if we did this but slow? Right?
You know what this needs? You know what this story needs? 8 episodes.
8 episodes. I mean, it's like, what if we took a single episode of Super Sentai and filmed it over 4 episodes?
Actually, do you know what you have there? Anime.
So anyway, the original Kamen Rider, it was a popular show, aired in the 70s, and then aired again in the 80s, and then went off the air, came back in the 2000s. I don't know, right? It's on and off. It's popular in Japan. It's got a kind of an iconic looking character. Kamen Rider, the original Kamen Rider he's got like a bug helmet on.
Isn't that like what Kamen translates to? Isn't it kind of like I might be wrong here.
I don't know. So here's an interesting American backstory to it. In the United States, Kamen Rider Black was actually imported and given the Haim Saban treatment as a show in the 90s called Masked Rider.
Oh yeah, yep.
And that was specifically, they used footage from Kamen Rider Black. And that's actually what got me to the show, because I watch a lot of Power Rangers and Super Sentai, and I've been like forcing myself for just historical reasons to watch some of the original Power Rangers. And it's been hard. And
the original American
show, because it's not good. I'm sorry, it's bad.
Right. I like the idea of you like watching with through gritted teeth, going like, this is for historical purposes.
Well, after I got to like a certain point, I've just been skipping episodes that don't sound like there's anything worth watching in it. I'm like, skip it. Anyway, so the beginning of season 3, they do a crossover episode with this new Saban series, Masked Rider.
Right.
And so I'm watching this. I'm like, what the
Wait. Kamen Rider Black does a crossover.
No, so Power Rangers did a crossover. Basically, at that point, Saban had gotten the license to do a Kamen Rider Black show. He called it Masked Rider.
Right.
And I think to get it, like, to spin it off, to get kids to watch the other show, they did this crossover with Power Rangers.
A backdoor pilot, ostensibly. No, because it's already going, right?
Actually, no. It was, I think, it was a front door pilot. I don't know, like, because I think they knew they were going to do it, but it was also, this was basically like the pilot.
Right.
It's not good. It was bad. But I was curious about it. I was like, okay, I've never heard of Kamen Rider, and I actually have friends who grew up watching Kamen Rider. And they really liked it, and never really liked these other shows. So I was like, okay.
I always kind of knew this Kamen Rider as being like the progenitor to the Sentai stuff, because where once was just one masked person fighting crime, there became
3 to 5
a group, a group of them,
And I think that is comparable.
It was like they're like a Japanese version of a superhero show, honestly.
Right. And they all are. That's really all they are. Which is actually why we talk about Spider-Man some other time. But that's like literally, it was just, we got a Marvel character but made it our way with, he has a giant robot and stuff. Like, of course Spider-Man does, right? But anyway, but the important part is when I looked it up, I'm like, oh, what show is this based off? Oh, this show called Kamen Rider Black. I looked a little bit about it, I'm like, this is fucking bizarre sounding. But then I saw, this show was remade as Kamen Rider Black Sun for worldwide release October 2022. And I'm like, wait, it was like October. I literally started watching it at the end of October. So I was almost contemporaneous with it.
Cutting edge. That's what they call you.
So I watched the show. It's a 10 episode. Each episode's about an hour long. 10 episode series.
Wow.
So it's a bit of a heft, but
that's unusual too, right? Like, I feel like, I mean, I'm going off of the Power Rangers.
Right. Well, the shows used to be more like 25 to 30 minutes.
Right.
Here's the thing. It's a gritty reboot.
Oh, really?
This is an adult, like, I did not know when I started watching it. In the first episode, I had to stop. And I'm like, wait, what is going on? So basically, the idea is this was the 35th anniversary of this original show, Kamen Rider Black. And they're like, well, we want to remake that concept, but modern and more for adults. So it's actually intended more for like adults who maybe watch the original or just like that kind of stuff.
Right.
But it is, you could watch it and honestly, you would just think it's kind of a weird modern sort of sci-fi flick, because they don't even do like an iconic transformation sequence where they yell henshin and do a little thing until like the 5th episode.
Oh, wow.
But here's the thing. Oh my gosh, this show, what is it about? It opens with a crowd of people in Japan protesting, saying Japan for humans only.
Oh boy.
Protesting against kaijin, who are also live in Japan, who are basically
kaijin, you said? Oh no.
People who can turn into they turn into
monsters.
Animals, basically.
Yeah.
Monsters. And it's basically it's a racist hate mob.
Yeah.
And that's what this show opens with.
Right. Because we can't ignore the parallel there between the word kaijin and gaijin, right? Yeah. Which means foreigner, for those that don't know. Yeah.
And
all right, I'm kind of into this now.
And it opens with like this young girl speaking before the United Nations about how kaijin and human are one and the same, and they should be treated equal. But then you see these crowds that were like beating up. Basically, you see like the protest, like this hate mob is like attacking kaijin who are there to counter protest, and the police arrest the kaijin, and it's like, oh my god, it's this whole second class. It's like
wow, so. That sounds like exactly the opening of X-Men 2000.
And also the opening of America. It was... I did not know what to expect. And it is like also really like... It is graphic. There's... I mean, actually, I think some of the episodes have 18 plus warnings on them.
Oh, wow.
And that's for graphic violence.
Oh, boy.
It's just... There's a lot of like tearing people apart and stuff.
Oh, Jesus.
Like,
okay.
Boy.
I was gonna say like Netflix Daredevil shit. You're like no.
I mean, yes, but actually, I would say less like visceral, because this is still a tokusatsu show. So it's like, oh, it's a silly monster, But I watch it and it just every episode is like, man, I don't know what I got into. I ended up finishing it because I was like, well, I started. I want to see the whole thing.
How many episodes?
It's 10 episodes.
Okay.
It is. Yeah, it's dark. And like what's interesting is the whole story. It kind of flip flops between the 1970s, where you basically see this like student protest about equal rights for kaijin, and then the 2022, where we see some of these people 50 years later and what they're doing.
Yeah.
Including our two main characters, Black Sun and Shadow Moon, are their like writer names.
Yeah.
And it is, and of course, it ends up getting into. There's discussion about World War II, about creating biological weapons for war, because, spoiler, we find out that's what the kaijin were, right? They were literally created as weapons by the Japanese government.
Which is an offshoot of sort of Godzilla's creation, right? It's like, oh, nuclear bombs were dropped and saturated the ocean, and poor lizard now is gigantic and wants to destroy everything, right?
So it was, it's just really, I just wasn't sure. And it just, and every time there's like they keep having scenes where you're like, oh my gosh. Like, like there's one where they kind of reveal that like there are people that basically get kaijin and they auction them off like property.
Oh my god.
Right? And it's like, oh man.
That's awesome though. Like, and not that concept is not awesome. The fact that this is going to sound real bad.
That was marketed probably towards children, and they're like, "Hey, what if most of the audience are adults now?"
I would say teens. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but also this. It's like using a popular genre, and I could get a lot of shit for this, but like, anime is kind of and that kind of culture is kind of homogenous in a way, in that like. And Hayao Miyazaki has complained about this. Is like, it's almost like it can be, I should say, a sort of factory mentality. What's popular? Let's pump out as many series about this kind of thing as possible, while possibly and often touching on important themes, impactful themes. But like, to see a Japanese show. And they probably do this a lot, but I'm at a distance because I live in California.
Let me just give you this important information.
Yes.
You have to remember that these shows, Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, were basically toy vehicles.
Exactly.
Even in Japan, like right, these were things to sell toys to the kids.
Right, and so like, to take those things and actually say something like not only controversial but progressive with them. is actually really cool to see. Like that's honestly like for that's what Transformers fans want, right? Make Optimus Prime talk shit about racism. Come on, that's what we want. That's the properties growing up with us, not having them say, "I'll rip off your face," and then having them be really realistically rendered. Like it's cool and like. And it's daring in a way that it's a use of the property in a very pointed and political way that can be divisive or divisive and alienating to perhaps a certain population of the fan base, but they don't care. And because they see a potential to tell an impactful story with a property, which is we actually more in the realm of like novels, like spin-offs and like comics, rather than actually like major media enterprises like TV and movies. So it's cool to see, or to hear in my case, that they're actually being kind of pretty bold with this. I guess the major question I have is like, now that you're done, I don't know how television necessarily works in Japan. Did they leave it open for a subsequent series, or is it a self-contained series? What's the deal?
Oh my god! Without going into, I don't want to be like spoilers for anyone that wants to watch it, but the end is bizarre. Like it ends with this idea of there's very clear, like it kind of ends with like, yeah, it's over, everything's over, but then also it's not, and you have what's clearly like, but then you end up with like someone who's like ostensibly the hero that's still alive at the end of the show, or the protagonist, let's not use the word hero, seems to be basically training a child army. Oh, you're like,
oh boy,
what? But to fight for good, and you're like, but wait, you're training a child army. Who, of course, the main the protagonist at that point is also basically a teenager,
right?
But it is weird. So yeah, it felt like they if they wanted to, they could do a second series with this character. Although I don't know where do you go from there? Who knows? Yeah. But it is, so I was reading a little bit about it, and apparently one of the kind of the genesis of the whole concept was that Kamen Rider Black was kind of, I guess, unique for the Kamen Rider because they had two characters that were basically like, it was kind of like brothers separated at birth kind of thing, where one of them is basically the bad guy and one is the good guy. Okay. So that was a main part of the story, was the conflict between Black Sun and Shadow Moon, or what, although they were both supposed to be working for the bad guys, Black Sun escapes and becomes his own person. And so then they have that conflict of, well, you're like my brother, but also I have to kill you now, and so that's the main focus of the story in this one, is they really wanted to glom onto that idea, but then also set it in this whole background of, what if we took all these words, like these concepts from the original, and turned it into this like political narrative about racism and political corruption. Huge part of the story. Like the idea that we discover like that the government is doing like really underhanded things to control basically the social kind of structure as it relates to Kaijin. And how Kaijin are complicit in that. Some of them are. Like there's a scene where one of the characters gets really depressed. Or gets like basically just gets kind of fucked up psychologically, like big PTSD moment where he realizes that the humans were fighting humans and Kaijin were fighting Kaijin over what he thought was like a simple black and white thing. The idea that there are good people and bad people on both sides of this conflict. Right. Or people that are like him and people that are different than him. And it is like, oh man, again, this is kind of a heavy thing for what is basically a remake of a toy commercial. Right. So yeah, I think what I liked about it was, I'll probably actually have a few others. I guess Amazon is the distribution partner for these.
I was going to ask where we can watch this.
So Kamen Rider Black Sun is on Amazon Prime, as is, I guess, a previous...
Free for Prime subscribers, or do you have to buy
free
it?
for Prime subscribers.
Okay, cool.
As is, there's another show that they did a few years ago that was another remake of a show called Kamen Rider... I'm going to say this, don't laugh. Kamen Rider Amazon, which is distributed worldwide as Amazon Rider.
Oh, no.
On Amazon. But that's another one. I'd be willing to give that one a whirl to see if it's, if it's comparable or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of like the idea of being able to see a contemporary tokusatsu show, because I've watched some of the old Super Sentai shows, but I can only watch stuff from the 90s because that's all I can get. So the idea that, oh, look, here I'm watching something essentially at the same time as people in Japan. And yeah.
Subbed?
Oh, yeah, subbed.
Okay.
There was no option, but it has subs in a lot of languages because it was a worldwide distribution.
That's cool.
So it's only subs. The one thing, bless her heart, I said the show opens with this young girl speaking before the United Nations about the equality of kaijin and humans, and she speaks English in front of the UN, and they don't subtitle her. And I swear to God, there's like 2 scenes in 2 episodes where she speaks extensive English, and I quite literally don't know what she's saying half the time. There's one where she goes on, I'm like, I get the gist of what she's saying, but I can't understand her.
Oh, man. Well,
but she tried, good for her.
No, it's not her fault, probably. I mean,
no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's it's a weird show. And of course, the one thing I think a lot about is how much I don't get because I lack the Japanese cultural context, but then I know enough to like the idea of that kind of racism and that kind of that's a thing. You and I are both aware that is real, right? Yeah. That's they didn't have to make that up. They just had to change the what they hate, whether it be instead of X, Y, or Z, it's kaijin.
Right.
So
kaijin or mutants, it's all the same.
Yeah,
only the names have changed.
I'm not sure if they're going to keep doing more of these. I mean, I kind of like the idea. I'd like to see more of how they interpret or how their shows are being done.
Right. I guess that's what I was asking you with regard to specifically this series. Do you know if there's any announcement about a sequel series?
I don't think so.
Or was it just done to be like an anniversary kind of homage and progressive?
I think it was.
Statement?
I think it was done as an anniversary special for adults.
Okay,
but they clearly left it where they could do something if they wanted to, right?
Right, but the paradigm has been shifted. It sounds like quite a bit.
Yeah. So, but I think the one thing that was kind of is interesting in the last episode. Whereas the first 9 episodes open with their established credit sequence, the last episode opens with what I can only presume is an homage to the original Kamen Rider introduction, because it's got like a different song. It's got like, it looks so grainy, like he's like on his motorcycle driving around, and it's like, oh, I bet you if I go watch the original, this is just that,
right? Like the last episode of She-Hulk,
right? That kind of thing. So it was again. Kind of a neat idea. I wish I had more context, because the one thing I learned about halfway through the show, I started looking up some of the characters and found out that they were a lot of like, oh, these characters were in the original, although in very different ways. And I think there's certain parts where it would have been kind of cool to know like, oh, that's this character. Oh, yeah, right. But it's okay. I didn't need that.
Sure.
But yeah, so that was my Week in Geek. Dan, what about you?
So Star Trek right now. I'm not going to talk about Star Trek this week because we have Andrew for that. But I am going to talk about a TV show, a relatively new TV show. It debuted at the end of October on Netflix called Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. Now, if you're a Del Toro fan like I am, the phrase Cabinet of Curiosities is not anything new. It's like an idea and a phrase and a term he likes. Del Toro personally keeps a lot of journals, does a lot of drawings in his journals when he's doing like film development, story development. And he released an entire book that's basically reproductions of his journals called Cabinet of Curiosities. And so it's like, well, he got his own TV show. What's he going to call it? The Cabinet of Curiosities. It's like it's his thing. And basically what it is Guillermo del Toro... and there's curious stuff inside. Now, it's Guillermo del Toro's Tales from the Crypt, ultimately. Oh, okay. It's an anthology show of horror that... there's a couple things that are interesting about it. One, they're really leaning into kind of the Rod Serling, not Outer Limits. What was the one he did? Twilight Zone. There we go. Kind of angle of it where every episode is introduced by Del Toro himself.
Oh, really? I was going to ask, is it Del Toro?
Yeah. And so they have this... This is going to be a really weird ask, Andrew, and I apologize. Have you ever played the mobile game called The Room? Or are you aware of it?
No.
Okay. So The Room is this weird puzzle game. It's actually really... It reminds me a lot of Myst in that you're presented with basically a room, and in the middle of the room is this weird puzzle box. And using touchscreen technology of your phone or an iPad, you like spin stuff around and try to open it up and like try to solve puzzles. It's like a self-contained puzzle box, right? And there's basically something like that in the middle of this black soundstage, and Guillermo del Toro himself comes out with his Coke bottle glasses and a not a tuxedo, but like a suit, and he's like, "Let me tell you about how things are scary," and then he pushes a button, and this weird machine, this weird puzzle box opens up, and he pulls out a book, or he pulls out a little statue, and he's like, "This is the story of all about how my life got turned upside down," right? And basically introducing the story that that episode is going to be about. But what's interesting about it is that he's also, before they cut away to the story, he's like, and this story was directed by so and so, and they made a little figurine for every director of the episodes that are made, and puts them down. So they're really kind of like forefronting the directors of this series, which is kind of cool to see. And a lot of these stories are adaptations of pre-existing short stories. One is two of them are actually short stories that Del Toro wrote that were published previously, I should say. One by a writer named Henry Kuttner, one by a writer named Michael Shea, one based on a webcomic, actually, by a wonderful cartoonist named Emily Carroll.
I was hoping you were going to say D. Bethel. I was like,
yeah, finally I can talk about it. Long John is a horror comic because it's so bad. But of particular interest to me as a Del Toro fan and as a fan of another creator, there are two stories in this season that are based on stories by one H.P. Lovecraft. Pickman's Model and the Dreams of the Witch House. Dreams in the Witch House, I should say. But that being said, before I get into I've only seen 3 episodes so far, because, not because they're bad, but because because
the show sucks.
Let's just say this: they can be gross. Del Toro is not ashamed or afraid of going into disgusting territory. And when you're watching shows with a partner that maybe has some problems with, let's just say, I don't know, rats in tight spaces, the desire to go back to the show can be difficult. But I will say the casting has been great. The stories themselves have been really interesting. But what I'm really here to talk about actually is the thing that's actually pertinent to our show and to me. I have watched one Lovecraft adaptation, the adaptation of one of my favorite Lovecraft stories, which is also one of his least racist stories, thank God, is Pickman's Model. And the nice thing about it is that it's actually a story about art. And as you can expect, the story has been greatly expanded upon, because Lovecraft stories, especially his short stories, are very Spartan in actual plot. right? It's mostly like most Lovecraft short stories are some dude coming up to some other person going like, dude, the craziest shit just happened. And I'm about to go crazy. But before I go crazy, I'm going to tell you about how crazy this shit that just happened was, right? And such is the case with Pickman's model. The original story is very, very small in terms of scope and scale, but it's very effective. I really like, especially the final lines. I should say this. Pickman's model is one of the Lovecraft stories that has an italicized final line. And let me take a minute to explain what I mean by that. For those that don't know, Lovecraft can be divided between in three categories in terms of his stories. We have his short stories. We have his like Cthulhu mythos, which is like his longer stories, novella or novel-length stories. And then we have his like dream stories that are much more abstract and expressionistic, or impressionistic, I should actually say. A little expressionistic, but whatever. That's beside the point. Most people know about the mythos stories of like Call of Cthulhu and Shadow of Innsmouth and Dunwich Horror and all that stuff, right? This is not one of those. This is one of his short stories. And his short stories are marked by the fact that they are actually very short, despite the language being very thick. But one of the funny parts about it that kind of makes them hard to recommend in a lot of ways is that they always end on a sentence that's italicized, and it's supposed to be like the mic drop moment, and oh, this is the thing that's going to scare the pants off you. But most in a modern context, it's like, oh, that was cute, right? Spoiler alert for a story called The Outsider, which is not part of this series that I'm talking about. It's a guy, it's like he's surrounded by ghouls and ghosts, and he's going through this old temple, and he's like, what's going on here? And then he goes into a room, and he sees across the room a ghoul, a decaying, decrepit ghoul, and he goes up to it because he's like, I can't run anymore, I have to face my fears, and he reaches out to touch the ghoul, but instead of touching the ghoul, what he touches, and this is like the italicized line, he touches the cold, flat surface of a mirror. Right? And like, it's that kind of stuff. And Pickman's model actually is an italicized final line story, but it's actually a very effective story. And one of the more effective italicized final line stories of Lovecraft.
By the way, I love the fact that we now have a genre of italicized final line story.
I'm here to add to the critical discourse of Lovecraft. But that being said, they had to fill an hour of television, and some of the decisions were fine. Some of the decisions are like, wow, you're just spending time, right? But I'm not sure if like the big draw for this episode is actually a benefit or a deficit, because it stars one Crispin Glover, most well known as the Elder McFly from the Back to the Future films, the Marty McFly's dad. What's his name?
George
McFly.
McFly.
Thank you. Yeah, Darth Vader. And also, right?
Didn't he also, if I recall, sued?
Yes.
The producers of the film or something.
Right, because they used his likeness or something like that, or they got a voice impersonator. Yeah, he's a weird dude, which actually makes him perfect. But
for this kind of TV show. Yeah.
But that's the thing. So this, if you know Lovecraft, it's a New England based story, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and the opening of this episode is beautiful because like we're in Arkham, Massachusetts. We go to Miskatonic University, and it's wonderful, and like it's a period piece. They get all those details right. It looks great. People are, but then Crispin Glover walks in with, I'm just going to put quotes around an accent that I don't know what he's doing, but I can probably guarantee he's getting paid too much. But that being said, it's not him. It's not even the story elements that they added to it, because I understand the reason why I have to do that. But it's the overall kind of aspect of the show that I think is, unfortunately, with Del Toro, who I've openly said is my favorite living director, honestly, because I love the fact that he approaches horror and monsters with heart. I don't know if the show does that, which is kind of the upsetting part, because I love the idea of Del Toro doing an anthology story of elevating or putting on display stories by creators that people should know more of, and giving a spotlight to directors that maybe need more attention. But the thing is, I feel like of the 3 episodes I've seen, of 10, of course, I think that's the standard of Netflix shows, they really lean into like the gore and like grossness of it, and maybe it gets better, but it's not as appealing as I would like it to be. And
you want more making out with fish people?
No, what I want more is creepiness, and that's the thing that especially what I love especially about the story of Pickman's Model is that it's creepy, and I don't want to give any of it away because you should read it. It's very short. And very effective. I would actually recommend people listening to an audio, not drama, but like an audio book of it, because the audio readings of it tend to be very effective, especially with the italicized last line. It's like I honestly swear it's the one time the italicized last line works. They add a bunch of stuff where it's like, oh, witches and Satan and blood and gore and we're eating babies. I'm like, why? Right? And I don't know. I'm going to keep watching it because it's Del Toro. And I want to support the work he does, and that's just kind of maybe the blind fanboy in me. But like, given the chance to do, I feel bad for saying this because I haven't watched the whole series yet. But on first impressions, which can be important, it's kind of not the Del Toro I know. And like I said, and kind of the joke I made at the beginning is like, this show is literally called Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities. And like, that means a lot to fans and to people like me, because I'm like, oh, he's approaching horror with heart and art. And so far,
it's more like art and fart.
I knew you were going to say that.
Sorry. you said heart and art, and I'm
art
like,
and fart. Yes, it makes, I would have said the same thing. And but you know what? Not fart, but you can tell that the tummy's upset. So I can report back later with more, because there are actually some episodes here, and that's the thing. Like, every episode, like, there's some. The first episode's really good. I actually really like that first episode. The second one is gross but good. Pickman's Model, I think, generally is pretty good. But every time I'm like, oh, that wasn't what I wanted to be. Every time I read a description of any subsequent story, I'm like, that sounds awesome, right? And so I'm not dissuaded yet. It's just like, how many hits can I take, And it's been an interesting experiment at the very least, and especially with anthology shows and horror anthology shows. I know I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad. I haven't read much about the discourse around the show, but I think from what I've seen, it's been, it's not universally hated, so, which is good. But I know Netflix has been also invested in some of the anthology stuff with, like, Love, Death, and Robots has 3 seasons now. It's an animation-focused sci-fi show. I bet you can't guess what it's about. Either love, death, or robots. And they have they've done some actually Lovecraft-centered stuff that has been okay. But I actually, if anything, I like the idea of anthology shows. But the thing is, the more I see of them, they're not always good. I guess
it's I've always been a bit. I grew up watching Twilight Zone in reruns, and at least 1 or 2 instances of a rebooted Twilight Zone.
You're about to enter
Outer Limits,
the scary door.
The scary door. And I've always been a fan.
Yeah.
I know that Apple tried to do their own show. With,
the Twilight Zone, right?
No, Amazing Stories. Which was Amazing Stories. as a TV show was I think a creature of the 80s. It was
right.
I want to say it was George Lucas and Spielberg.
Well, wasn't the Jordan Peele reboot of Twilight Zone on Apple? Or am I making that up?
No. Jordan Peele's is that Apple? No, I think
or was that Outer
Limits?
Limits? Or was that Twilight Zone? I can't remember.
But yeah, Twilight Zone. Jordan Peele did the Twilight Zone, which I did like. Although it had some very complicated episodes. Speaking of racism.
Well, I mean, that's
not surprising.
I could have talked about that too. I watched Nope. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's but I like the whole concept of the anthology shows. I to me they're I think because you get a different cast every time. You can have very different style, and sometimes you get a hit or a miss. But I generally think they're fun, and I've always liked them. And I kind of regret that it seems like they never really get the power, like the weight to keep going. Like everyone's really set on, big serial narratives and stuff, and
which we have been proponents for on the show.
Yeah,
our tastes on TV, because we've just been doing the show for so long, have actually kind of vacillated between serialized and episodic. I think the closest maybe successful anthology show that's happened, and it's anthology in kind of name only, has been something like American Horror Story, where it's not episodically.
Each season is.
Yeah, each season is its own isolated story, but it's not an episodic like episode. Every episode is a different story, a different cast.
Right.
Actually, what they do is interesting in its own right. Like every season is a new story, but the same cast.
Right.
Which is cool. Like that's a cool idea. Like good for them.
I think there's another show that does that. The one with Daniel Radcliffe. I forget what it's called.
Harry Potter.
No, he's a show. I just know because I saw an advert for it. It was like he was like a medieval king, and then all of a sudden it was a western. They're like, really? New season they did a different. Yeah.
Oh dang, I have to do some research.
Yeah, I mean it's. But I suspect that the anthology shows just don't draw crowds like they like they used to.
Right.
Like no one bunches around the water cooler to talk about, did you see last night's anthology of horror? Right.
But I will say, like, I like the effort that Netflix is putting into Cabinet of Curiosities. We've had stories starring Tim Blake Nelson, if you know him. He's from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, if you're familiar with that. We've got a story starring F. Murray Abraham. We've got a story starring, like I said, Crispin Glover. We've got a story starring Rupert Grint of Harry Potter fame. We've got a story starring
ice cream truck.
Peter Weller. And Andrew Lincoln from The Walking Dead. So like they're bringing the names out. I think maybe that's what Del Toro brings to the table, at the very least in this first season, where he's like, hey, I won an Oscar because I wrote and directed a movie about a woman fucking a fish man. Which is a fine movie. I like fine. And I love Del Toro. But he has enough clout to get talent that will bring eyes to an anthologized show. Whether it works or not is up to the quality of the stories, the acting, and the directing. Which at this point, for me, don't seem to be elevating this genre. They're kind of it's fine, but I think the problem with anthology shows, kind of what we're talking about, is that like each episode is kind of hit or miss, especially when you're bringing on different directors, different casts. Like it's literally a gamble, and you really need to be on your shit. And like that's the thing. I guess maybe I would have wanted more. Considering I am such an apologetic fanboy of Del Toro, I would have maybe just preferred he had directed every episode and done and sure the cast can change, the writers can change, but at least we have a codified and cohesive and I can't think of the word, but like a cohesive vision and voice throughout all the episodes. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that's not there, but like it could have been stronger. And especially with what Del Toro brings to the table with horror, with fantasy, I would have liked to see more of that. And again, I'm only 3 episodes deep, but to have such kind of a not disappointing, but like, okay, this is just an anthology show. This is him doing Tales from the Crypt, and instead, what I should have said, this is Del Toro. This is another Del Toro entry into his oeuvre, right? And it's not, and that's to me, that's kind of too bad. But I want to keep watching, and if it gets better, I'll definitely let you know, dear listeners.
Well, and it's funny because I wonder, thinking about the effect Rod Serling probably had on the Twilight Zone, as a writer, because that was his big thing,
right?
And I think he even wrote a lot of those episodes.
He did, yeah.
And how maybe why it had a feel to it that was consistent. Although then again, The Outer Limits was a popular show as well, and I don't think it had that
much
same
more
thing.
Diversified, yeah. Allegedly, it's probably still all white dudes, but
well, right.
It's creepy, it's cool, and I think generally, from what I've seen with Pickman's Model, it is a good adaptation of Lovecraft. But that's something always keeping an ear out for. It's like adapting Lovecraft to get it out to a modern audience, while not necessarily shying away from the problematic angles of it. Luckily, I mean, I don't want to say luckily, but to an extent, if Pickens' Model is your initial introduction to Lovecraft, and like this, the televised version of that story is not really a problematic story of Lovecraft. It's an interesting scree on art and criticism. And I will say, to that end, the adapted version does meet those requirements very well. It is picking up what Lovecraft was putting down in terms of art and expression versus interpretation. And it just doesn't, this show doesn't just do much with it. And that's the frustrating part. I'm like, you guys were so close. You were there. Fucking, no, say something. Like, let's put some Kamen Rider Black Sun in this. Come on.
Oh, boy.
So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintense.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can also find us in other social media as well, at least as long as they survive, by checking us out on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, you can find us at both places, you can find us at our respective handles. On Twitter, you can find Andrew at Profound Dark, tweeting about tabletop role-playing games. You can find me You can find him at Profound Dark. You can find me at Bethel. You can also find us on Instagram, where you can find Andrew at Profound Brick and me and my work at Bethel Comics.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking on the link in the corner that says YouTube, or you may already be there, because we do, in fact, simulcast our show to YouTube.
Yep, that's what we're doing.
If you are, like and subscribe, or as the children like to say, ring the bell.
Simulcasting up and down. We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4. They're both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod, the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire. You can find his music at Incompetech at filmmusic.io, or I believe just at www.incompetech.com. And that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 attribution license. If you like the show and like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to go to their storefront, leaving some sort of review, whether a text review or using their proprietary metric will help spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. I feel like the last time we had a show, we ended on a downer, and I really hate to do it again, Andrew. But we have suffered some losses since we last recorded.
Oh.
And obviously, at least one of these people, we could dedicate more time, and we probably should. But we should take the time to prep and discuss. But I did not want to let another week go by without discussing the passing of Kevin Conroy, the voice of Bruce Wayne and Batman. Not in that order, but at a truly shocking loss, actually, considering he was so present. He was always, working on Batman stuff, and just kind of like come out of nowhere with cancer. By the way, hashtag fuck cancer. That hit me harder than, not than I expected, but like it was sooner than I expected for sure.
Yeah, it's always, I mean, people dying it happens. It's always unfortunate, but this is definitely one where it's like, oh wait, but that guy, right? Like, right. Kind of this icon of for a lot of people. Yeah. I think there's, I would say, and this may be controversial, that when it comes to actors portraying Batman, I would suggest that the two most popular actors that people identify as Batman are Adam West and Kevin Conroy.
Sure.
Although Conroy obviously more for the voice, but still, like, when people say my Batman is,
right,
those are the two I feel like you're going to hear more often than anything else.
Yeah, I would say maybe this is weird, and maybe, I mean, let me know in the comments, dear listeners. Michael Keaton is kind of thrown in there as well, just because those movies came out when a generation was young.
Right. I think for me, because the animated series like came kind of hot on the heels of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's the one that I was seeing all the time.
Yeah.
And also, I actually really didn't like that first movie.
First movie? Fuck you.
I just because I didn't like the Joker. I think that this is just different discussion for a different time.
Indeed.
Jack Nicholson to me was not my favorite Joker.
Wow. Well, yeah, sure, but he's entertaining to watch. Yeah, it was a sad loss. Gone far too young, and
actually, I'll say not as I think impactful, but definitely another surprising death. Jason David Frank,
right?
Who I think all he ever was really known for was, I mean, I hate to say it, but like I don't think he had much of a career outside of it, but he portrayed Tommy Oliver, the Green Power Ranger, and Red Power Ranger, and Black Power Ranger,
and White Power Ranger,
and White Power, yeah,
White/Gold. I can't remember how the designated.
He portrayed several Power Rangers because he became so popular that he stayed with that show for years and continued to do more so than anyone else. Reappearances and supporting kind of the genre or whatever you call it.
I've seen a lot of all the people actually in the wake of his death. Original Pink Ranger, I think Amy Jo Johnson, I think that's her name. She's been posting a lot of like retrospectives and like videos and remembrances of him just as a person, which is cool. And he seemed to eventually, at the very least, grow into sort of the place of nostalgia that he had in people's hearts, and accepted it wildly. But obviously seemed to be, dealing with a lot of stuff. And we should say, obviously, and importantly, that if you are dealing with depression, with intrusive thoughts, you please reach out to people that you feel you can talk to that are trained to help you, and get the help that you deserve. Yeah, absolutely. A sad loss. And yeah, he will be missed. I mean, and as you said, like, just because of his tenure with the Rangers, a show that you are not necessarily super fan of. You're by proxy. You're like earlier this episode, you're saying that show's kind of bad. We can't deny the impact that the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has had on American culture since the mid '90s, and he is undeniably a big part of that. So yeah, shout out to those actors and to the inimitable role they played in our lives and American culture, and perhaps global culture. I mean, I can't say this. I can't go away without saying this. Like, Kevin Conroy, also like a major advocate for gay actors in the realm of superheroes and nerd media. Like,
we should if we can, we'll have a link in the show notes to the comic he did about his life. Yeah, in the last year or two, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
About his experience, being an actor who was gay and how he dealt with that and how the role of Batman actually was important to him in that regard.
Yeah. So, not to end on a bummer, but we did it. It's two actors that played important roles to the lives of many people in our generation or right behind us. And they will be missed. And we are very thankful and appreciative of their contributions. So until you let the people in your lives know how important they are to you, and of course, if you love Kevin Conroy or Jason David Frank, until next week, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
You can find us on other social media as well. You can also find us on other social media as well.
So I had a jar of soup that I made. I was like, okay, because I love soup. And I hate it. And I'm like, I'm still hungry.
Can we talk about the word jar?
Tune in next week for another exciting adventure in what is Andrew eating? If it's good enough for Reagan, then it's good enough for me. What?
Oh, God. Mason jars full of frozen pasta? I'm not judging, but I'm judging.
Oh, it actually works out really well.